The moment she stepped into the ballroom, Lady Catherine felt it. Something was wrong. The music still played. The chandeliers still burned bright. Laughter still floated through the air of the grand Greyhaven estate. Yet a strange hush moved through the room like a cold breath, as if the walls themselves were holding still. Catherine paused just inside the doorway, her gloved hand tightening around her fan. 1 year ago, she would have turned and fled. Tonight she lifted her chin and walked forward. It was the spring of 1896 in New York State, and Greyhaven was hosting one of the most important society balls of the season. Catherine adjusted the pearl pin in her hair, a gift from her late mother, and reminded herself that she had survived far worse than whispers. She had survived him. A year earlier, Duke Edmund Ashford had vanished from her life without a word. No letter, no warning, no explanation. Weeks of careful courtship had ended in silence so deep it nearly broke her. She had cried until her body felt hollow, had refused meals, had stared at the same wall for hours, wondering how love could disappear so completely. But that woman no longer existed. Tonight, Catherine moved through the room in a pale blue silk gown, her posture calm, her expression composed. Head turned. Conversations softened. People noticed her again. Lady Catherine, Lady Rothwell said warmly, clasping her hands. "You look radiant." Catherine smiled politely. "You are very kind. Your ball is as beautiful as ever." She accepted a glass of champagne she never intended to drink and allowed herself one steady breath. Faces she recognized nodded with approval. Others studied her with open curiosity. Society had noticed her disappearance last year. Society always noticed pain. The orchestra began a familiar waltz. As Catherine turned, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "May I have this dance, Lady Catherine?" She found herself smiling genuinely as she faced James Howard. James had been a comfort when the world felt unkind. Steady, gentle, present. He had never asked for more than she could give. "I would like that," she said. They joined the dancers, and Catherine allowed herself to feel something close to peace. Her steps were sure, her laughter easy. She had rebuilt herself slowly, carefully, brick by brick. "I am glad to see you enjoying yourself," James said as they moved. "You seem lighter." "I am grateful," Catherine replied. "That is all." Then the music faltered. Not stopped, not fully, just enough for attention to shift. A ripple passed through the dancers. A whisper moved faster than sound. "The Duke has arrived." Catherine did not look. She refused to look. Her hand tightened briefly in James's, but her face remained calm. Across the room, Edmund Ashford stood framed by the entrance, tall and unmistakable. His dark coat was tailored perfectly. His presence alone demanded notice. On his arm rested Duchess Elizabeth Harrington, dressed in deep crimson, diamonds catching every flame of candlelight. They looked magnificent. They looked together. "Are you unwell?" James asked quietly. "Only warm," Catherine replied, forcing a smile. She would not look at Edmund. She would not give him that power again. But fate was unkind. As the dance ended and James guided her from the floor, Catherine lifted her eyes and met Edmund's. The room vanished. For one breath, there was nothing but memory. The nights of laughter, the stolen walks, the promises never spoken aloud. His face showed something she had never expected to see again. Regret, pain, something dangerously close to longing. Catherine broke the connection first. She turned away with practiced grace, accepted another invitation, laughed when expected, spoke when spoken to. Yet her heart beat so loudly she feared others might hear it. Across the room, Edmund did not move. He barely heard Elizabeth speaking. His eyes followed Catherine as if drawn by something he could not resist. She was different, stronger, more distant. The softness she once offered him freely was now guarded, and that was his doing. Elizabeth tugged gently at his arm. "You promised me refreshment." "Yes," he said absently, still watching Catherine. "Of course. Lord Rothwell intercepted him near the table. "Didn't expect to see you this season, Duke." "I had obligations," Edmund replied. Rothwell lowered his voice. "I see Catherine Petone is here. Interesting, given last year." Edmund stiffened. "We are merely acquaintances." Rothwell smiled knowingly. "She seems quite taken with young Howard." That single sentence burned. Across the room, Catherine laughed at something James said. Edmund felt something dark twist in his chest. Meanwhile, Catherine's younger sister Helena hurried to her side. "He keeps staring at you." "Let him," Catherine replied calmly. "It changes nothing." But Helena saw through her. "You are lying." "Especially after everything," Catherine said softly. As the evening wore on, they circled one another without touching, until Elizabeth steered Edmund directly toward Catherine. "Lady Catherine," the Duchess said sweetly, "how long it has been." Catherine curtsied. "Your Grace." "I do hope you are enjoying the season," Elizabeth continued, her hand tightening possessively around Edmund's arm. "The Duke has been escorting me everywhere." Edmund cleared his throat. "Lady Catherine." "Lady Helena." "Howard has been telling us of his travels," Catherine said evenly. "Most engaging." James stepped forward politely. Introductions were made. Tension thickened the air. Helena leaned close and whispered, "Breathe." Catherine smiled, though her hands trembled beneath her gloves. "I require some air," she said suddenly. She fled to the terrace. The night air was cool and sharp. Catherine gripped the stone railing and scolded herself. 1 year of healing undone by a single glance. Catherine. She froze. She turned slowly. "Your Grace," she said coolly, "your companion will be wondering where you are." "I needed to speak with you." After a year of silence, he stepped closer. "Please." Something in his voice stopped her. Not confidence, not pride. Fear. "One moment," she allowed. "I regret what I did," Edmund said. "I think of you often." "How flattering," she replied coldly. "I have trained myself not to think of you at all." He flinched. "You have changed," he said. "Yes, you seem happy." "I am functional," she corrected, "which is more than I was." He reached for her wrist, then stopped himself. "I made a mistake." "Yes," she said softly. "You did." She turned and walked back inside, leaving him alone. The next morning, society wasted no time. Catherine sat with Helena as the newspaper described her triumphant return and curious tension with the Duke. "I would prefer invisibility," Catherine muttered. A package arrived. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Inside was a book of poetry they once shared, a pressed flower marking a page they had read together. Helena sighed. Romantic. Catherine closed the book firmly. Meaningless. Yet she did not throw it away. That afternoon, James visited. He spoke honestly, kindly. He offered patience, not pressure. Catherine told him the truth. "I cannot promise what I do not feel." James accepted it with dignity. Later that evening, her father summoned her. "The Duke visited," he said gravely. "He asked permission to court you again." Catherine's heart lurched. "And what did you say?" "That you decide," her father replied. "But I warned him." That night, Catherine lay awake staring at the ceiling, the book hidden in her drawer, her heart caught between the man who never left and the man who once shattered her. Outside, the city slept. Inside, everything had begun again. The days following Lady Rothwell's ball passed with cruel slowness. Catherine tried to resume her carefully ordered life, but order had deserted her. Invitations arrived daily. Names she had avoided for a year suddenly sought her company again. Everywhere she went, eyes followed her, and whispers floated just beyond hearing. And always, there was the Duke. He did not seek her openly. He did not corner her or demand her attention. Instead, he existed in the same rooms, the same gatherings, always just near enough to be felt. It was unbearable. 2 mornings after the ball, Catherine sat in the front parlor with Helena when the butler announced a visitor, Mr. Howard. James entered with his usual calm presence, but Catherine noticed the tightness in his expression. "I hope I am not intruding," he said. "Never," Catherine replied warmly. "Please sit." They spoke of simple things at first. Music, weather, a planned concert. Then James fell silent, studying her carefully. "I saw the Duke yesterday," he said finally. Catherine's fingers tightened around her teacup. "I see. He seems determined," James continued. "He asked after you." She met his gaze honestly. "And how do you feel about that?" James smiled faintly. "I feel that you deserve truth, consistency, and respect. Whoever offers you less does not deserve you." The words settled heavily in her chest. "You are very kind," she said. "I am honest," he replied. "There is a difference." After he left, Catherine sat very still. James offered safety, stability, a future without fear. Yet her heart remained stubborn, aching toward the man who had hurt her most. That afternoon, her father requested her presence in his study. "The Duke has written," he said, handing her a letter unopened. Catherine stared at it. "You did not respond?" "I told him nothing would be decided without your consent." She broke the seal with trembling fingers. He wrote simply, no grand words, no excuses. He asked only for one meeting, one chance to explain everything. Her father watched her carefully. "You are not obligated to grant it." "I know," Catherine replied, but she did. They met in the public gardens near the river, where propriety was preserved by daylight and passing strangers. Edmund stood when he saw her approach, hat in hand, his expression restrained but strained. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I am here for answers," Catherine replied. "Nothing more." They walked in silence for several moments before Edmund spoke. "When I left last year, it was not because I stopped caring," he said. "It was because I learned something that frightened me." She stopped. "You abandoned me to protect me?" "Yes." She laughed sharply. A convenient explanation. He did not flinch. "I was investigating a man who had ruined my father financially and may have caused his death. That man had influence, power. If he learned of you, he would have been used against me." "And you decided for me," Catherine said, without asking. "Yes," he admitted, "and I was wrong." He told her everything. The threats, the sabotage, the danger, the calculated closeness to the Duchess to gain access to information, the arrest that had finally ended it. Catherine listened without interruption. When he finished, she said quietly, "You stole my choice." "I know. You let me believe I was nothing." "That is my greatest regret." She looked at him then, truly looked. He was thinner, older. The confidence he once wore so easily had been replaced by something humbler. "I do not know if I can forgive you," she said. "I am not asking for forgiveness," he replied. "Only the chance to earn it." She turned away. "I will consider it." It was not a promise, but it was not a refusal. Word of their meeting spread quickly. At the next musical gathering, Catherine found herself under open scrutiny. The Duchess watched her openly now, her smile sharp, her eyes calculating. During intermission, the Duchess approached. "You have caused quite a stir," she said softly. "The Duke has been distant." "I have caused nothing," Catherine replied evenly. The Duchess leaned closer. "You are mistaken if you believe he belongs to you." Catherine met her gaze calmly. "I do not believe anyone belongs to anyone." That evening, Edmund did not dance with the Duchess. He did not dance at all. 2 days later, Catherine received an invitation she did not expect. Silvermere Court. The Duke requested that she and her family visit his estate for a fortnight. "He wishes you to see him as he truly is," her father said thoughtfully, away from gossip. Helena's eyes sparkled. "You must go." Catherine hesitated. The idea unsettled her, yet something deep within her wanted answers only distance could provide. They traveled north beneath gray skies. As Silvermere Court came into view, Catherine felt a strange sense of calm. Edmund greeted them not as a Grand Duke, but as a steward. He spoke with warmth to servants, listened carefully to tenants, oversaw repairs with personal attention. Catherine observed quietly. She saw him rise early, walk the land, speak gently to children, ensure an injured laborer received care. This was not performance. This was character. One afternoon, she joined him by the lake. "You are different here," she said. "This is where I am honest," he replied. He did not press her. He did not touch her. He waited. Days passed. Slowly, something began to mend. Yet danger still lingered. A letter arrived from London. The Duchess had allied herself openly against him. The trial had grown complicated. Accusations were being made. "We must return," Edmund said grimly. Catherine nodded. "Then we return together." London greeted them with tension. The Duchess had not retreated. She confronted Catherine openly at a crowded ball. "You are mistaken if you think this ends well for you," she hissed. Catherine replied calmly, "I no longer fear endings." That night, Edmund took Catherine's hand openly for the first time since their separation. The room went silent. Whispers died. And for the first time in a year, Catherine did not pull away. The past was not healed, but the future had begun to fight back. The silence that followed Edmund taking Catherine's hand was heavier than any music. People pretended not to stare. Fans fluttered. Conversations resumed in hushed fragments. But everyone in the room understood what they had just witnessed. A line had been crossed, and it could not be uncrossed. Catherine felt the warmth of Edmund's hand through her glove. Her heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with resolve. For the first time since her heart had shattered, she was not reacting. She was choosing. They did not speak as the evening ended. Words were unnecessary. Outside, Edmund assisted her into her father's carriage with quiet care. "I will call tomorrow," he said simply. "I will expect you," she replied. That night, Catherine did not sleep. She lay awake thinking not of the pain he caused, but of the man she had seen at Silvermere, the man who rose before dawn to walk his land, the man who carried guilt like a wound and did not look away from it, the man who had loved her enough to leave, yet lacked the wisdom to trust her. By morning, she knew one truth. Love without trust was fragile, but love rebuilt with honesty could endure anything. Edmund arrived at precisely 2:00. Her father received him first. The conversation behind closed doors was long and quiet. When Edmund finally entered the parlor, Catherine stood. He did not speak immediately. He looked at her as if memorizing her face. "I am here," he said. "Not as a duke, but as a man asking forgiveness." Catherine gestured for him to sit. "I do not need your apologies," she said calmly. "I need your promise." He nodded. "Anything. If you ever face danger again," she said, her voice steady, "you will tell me. You will not decide my fate for me. You will let me stand beside you." He did not hesitate. "I swear it." She studied him for a long moment. "Then I will allow you to court me again," she said, slowly, openly. The relief on his face was unmistakable. News traveled faster than truth. By evening, society buzzed with speculation. The Duchess of Harrington did not wait quietly. She arrived unannounced the following day, her composure brittle. "You have humiliated me," she said to Edmund without greeting. "I never promised you anything," he replied calmly. "You led me to believe." "I allowed you to assume," he interrupted. "That ends now." She turned her sharp gaze to Catherine. "Do not celebrate too soon." Catherine met her stare without fear. "I am not celebrating. I am choosing." The Duchess left in fury. Days later, the trial concluded. The verdict was guilty. The man who had destroyed Edmund's father, who had threatened lives and manipulated fortunes, was finally imprisoned. Justice had come late, but it had come fully. That evening, Edmund requested Catherine's presence in the park. They walked beneath bare branches and fading light. "I am free," he said quietly, "not just from him. From the past." She stopped walking. "Then hear me clearly." He turned. "I forgive you," Catherine said, "not because what you did was right, but because I see who you are now." Emotion tightened his voice. "You saved me." "No," she replied gently. "We saved each other." He reached into his coat and withdrew a small velvet box. Catherine's breath caught. "I will not kneel unless you wish me to," he said. "I will not ask unless you are ready." She smiled softly. "Ask." He knelt, anyway. "Catherine Elizabeth Peyton," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I love you not despite your strength, but because of it. Will you be my wife?" Tears blurred her vision. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." The ring slipped onto her finger, fitting as if it had always belonged there. Their engagement shook society. Some celebrated, some gossiped, some doubted. James Howard came to offer his congratulations with grace that humbled them both. "You chose with courage," he said quietly. "I wish you happiness." She embraced him with gratitude and sorrow. The wedding was held at Silvermere Court that autumn, not grand for show, but rich with meaning. Tenants stood beside nobility. Children scattered petals. Bells rang across the hills. When Catherine spoke her vows, her voice did not waver. When Edmund spoke his, tears stood in his eyes. They promised not perfection, but honesty. Not safety, but partnership. Years passed. Silvermere thrived. Catherine became a duchess not by title, but by presence. She listened. She built schools. She argued gently but firmly for change. Edmund stood beside her, no longer carrying guilt alone. They had children. Laughter filled halls once quiet with regret. One evening, years later, they stood again in the ballroom where everything had begun. Music played. Candles glowed. Edmund took her hand. "Do you remember," he asked softly, "when every whisper died?" She smiled. "I remember choosing to stay." They danced, and this time, nothing broke between them. Not silence, not fear, not time. Their love had been tested by absence, pain, and truth, and it endured, because it was chosen.